Hi, welcome back. This is Lillian from Crackin' Crafting and I'm delighted that you're joining me today. Today's project is going to be this gorgeous little greetings card. We're going to be using the brayering technique and I'm using a soft rubber brayer. Stampin' Up used to sell these, but unfortunately they don't any longer. But they do sell another version, a soft sponge version that you might like to try if you've got one of these. So I would recommend using it. I really love this brayer. So as I said, it's going to be a very simple brayering technique, nothing difficult, nothing complicated. So if you're new to brayering, this is perfect for you. As I said, I'm using the So Hoppy For You stamp set. That's free in the current celebration catalogue. You've got to check this out. You're going to absolutely adore it. So before we move on, I would suggest you pause this video a second and click the show more button just under the video here. Then you click on my blog post link where you will find full details of the measurements and tools etc. used today. So pause the video quickly and do that now. Okay, so hopefully now you're viewing this from the blog post and we'll get started. So we're going to start with some very easy brayering. So let me get this out of the way and bring in one of the classic stamping pads. This is the Pear Bazaar ink pad. This is the old style pad in case you're wondering. Brayering can make the ink pad become quite thirsty, so every time I purchase an ink pad I always purchase the little re-inker bottles. They're so handy to have and they're great for other techniques as well. I use them for baby wipe techniques and things like that, so do look out for those tutorials on my blog on YouTube. This one has been re-inked, so I don't think it's actually too bad, but we'll give it a go. So here is the soft rubber brayer, and this, as you can see, is well loved. Let me just take this little mark off it because that will show up. It's picked up a little bit of glue from somewhere. That will actually show up on the brayering. So it should be clean otherwise, although it doesn't look it. My ink pad is ready. I tend to ink from this position rather than this position here. So I'm only covering about this portion of the artwork piece. This is the Whisper White cardstock. It's great for inking techniques. So I don't need to ink the whole roller. I just need to ink a portion. When I'm inking, I roll it in one direction. I don't seesaw. I'm rolling it in one direction. I'm getting a nice coverage of ink there. I might actually need to re-ink this. Let me turn this the other side. Okay, so I've just inked about that portion there. Take that out of the way a second. I'm using scrap paper just to protect my grid paper for now from getting too inky. When I start, I'll explain quickly before I actually start the technique. When I start the brayering, I start off the cardstock and then work my way on and across. You need to do this to get it to travel. You need to do it fairly quickly, and you also, when you're brayering, must come off each side of your card. You cannot stop in the middle or you'll end up with a line with a mark in it. So sorry, my sleeves are falling down. I'm wearing a big bulky jumper today. Okay, so ready to go. Starting off and working my way up, and you can hear it thumping off each side. I'll just keep re-inking. Again, starting off, bringing it in. And that is it. That is the most basic brayering technique. Very easy. As you can see, it becomes more and more subtle the further up that it travels. If I wanted it, which I will want, to be deeper in colour at the bottom, I simply add a little ink to the brayer, but instead of going fast to get it to travel up the card, I go slower, and that leaves more ink on the card. As you can see, that's slightly deeper. Let me do that again. Do you see how that's getting darker in shade there at the bottom because I'm doing it much slower. It's not traveling up the card and it's getting time to deposit more ink at the bottom. Now, if you wanted to do a wee quick cheat, you could, let me grab a sponge here. I get these sponges and cut them into quarters. They're fantastic. Put a little ink on the sponge. In fact, I'm going to bring in a darker colour. I'm going to bring in Old Olive. And excuse the writing on this. This is so my class knows whether it's from Regals, Subtles, Brights, Neutrals, what have you, without me having to explain every time. So I've put a little bit of the Old Olive ink onto the sponge. I take some of that off because I don't want it to be splodgy looking like this when it gets onto the card. And you just darken it up. If you want to do it this way rather than darken it up with the ink, with the brayer, with the rubber brayer. So you can darken it up that way. Circular motions smooths it out beautifully. And again, if you want it a little bit darker, let's get the garden green. I'm going to use the same sponge because I'm going darker in shade, so it's okay to put that onto the ink pad. And I'm going to just apply this right at the very, very bottom, just to darken it. Actually, more daubing it on rather than blending it in, if you want to get the bottom very dark. Another thing you might like to do is darken the sides. It kind of frames it a little bit. There we go. So that is the brayering completed. Easy. So next thing we'll do, we're going to move on to the top of the card where we'll do some light sponging in the sky. Now I've got the lovely balmy blue ink pad and a clean sponge. This is the new style ink pad. It opens like a compact. I'd also previously created myself a little clouds template. I use this all the time. If you've got the up and away stamp set, you'll have a little cloud in it. Just stamp it on with stays on ink and then just cut around the edges of the clouds. And this is a larger cloud image, stamped image that I used. I can't actually remember what that was from, to be honest, but that just gives me a wider spread of cloud formation. So we're just going to use this little one here. I've turned my artwork piece round so that I'm working from the top down. The top will always be darker than as it gets down near the green, near the ground area. So I'm going to ink it up again, take some of it off there and sponge it. And my other card now, I've done this very, very subtly, but I'm going to do it a little bit darker so that you can see it more clearly. I'm not going to re-ink it at this stage, but I just move the template over, the cloud template over, and I ink just above it, trying to leave some white area here as well. You see? Move it over again a little bit. Let's see. Maybe I want to take that wee. No, that's too close, I think. Maybe do it here, see what it looks like. Just skim it across the top. Yeah, that looks okay. And as it's getting down near the bottom, I'm going to actually turn it and turn it upside down. I want to leave some white space if possible, but just very lightly give it a little shimmy across. There we go. Now, as I say, that's quite exaggerated so that you could see it clearly, but I still like the effect. So that's the clouds done. Now we're going to move on to marker to stamp technique. Now, what I want, as you can see from this stamp, the little frog is sitting on top of the unicycle, but I want him to be doing a little bit more acrobat. So I have taken him and put him standing on top of the unicycle, reaching out for the little dragonfly, and simply the sentiment says, you can do anything which is a great sentiment. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You must ensure, however, that your stamp is really, really clean. Even if you've cleaned it, give it a good stamping off, whoops, onto some scrap paper to remove any residue cleaner from it, because you don't want it transferring to this. So all I'm going to do now is take the brush end of the Stampin' Right marker, and I'm using the basic black. Love these markers. Let me take that out of the way. Now what you need to be careful is that you don't touch this little bottom here, that you put the marker. Hopefully I can see this correctly. There we go. I've got the seat of the unicycle, and I'm just going to use the side of the marker, bring it down, make sure not to catch his feet in it, if at all possible. There we go. Bring in the wheel and all the spokes. Here we go. Now, so what I've done is separated the frog from the unicycle. Let me close this up. Now, if that has dried up while you've been doing it, all you have to do is huff on it to reactivate the ink. I'm not going to show you my huffing face because it's not pretty. So I'll just huff quickly. Position the stamp. I keep in the count, always keeping count with the thirds. So I'm kind of figuring out where is he going to, when he's standing, where is he going to reach up to? So I'm bringing it down a little. About here, because obviously he's seated, so he's not going too high up the card, but I'm going to have him standing, so he'll be a little bit higher. Okay, perfect. It's just a little bit of, don't know what it is, fibre, black fibre. Now that needs cleaned, obviously, and I normally give my stamps a really good clean with the Stampin' Scrub after I finished using them for every project or every tutorial, but for now I'm just going to wipe it off in the Simply Chamois. It's handy to have, it's brilliant, you've got to check that out. So we'll set that to the side for now. Now I've got a little bit of scrap paper. On this I've already stamped and coloured the little dragonfly, but what I need to do is bring in some, let me move this out of the way, of my Memento ink. I'm using the Memento especially, I use it all the time to be honest, unless it's on acetate or anything where I would use stays on. I'm using the Memento because it works well with alcohol markers, and today we're going to be using the Stampin' Up! Stampin' Blends, the alcohol markers. They are just gorgeous and perfect for this project. So scrap paper, I've got my little frog, and I'm just going to, let's see, it'll probably fit better this way. Stamp him on. There we go. Oh, that, my Simply Chamois mustn't have been wet. It hasn't cleaned it, or I have, oh no, I've actually re-inked the end of it. That's what it is. I'm talking rubbish. Okay, I've got my little frog stamp, so I'm going to bring in, these are the fantastic Stampin' Blends, Daffodil Delight and Old Olive. As you can see, they come in dark and light shades, which is obviously perfect for blending. You can buy them individually or you can buy them as a set. They don't come with these little Velcro tabs on them. I stuck them on. That was a great idea by my lovely friend Megan Daves. So, but it's handy actually to stick them together, because when they're in the box, I'm not having to rummage through trying to find the two markers that complement each other. So I'm going to use the light Daffodil Delight and the brush end and just give our little fellow some highlight on his face, on his tummy. Now I'm not being too careful because I'm going to be fussy cutting this out. If you were doing this directly to the card, You would be more careful because alcohol ink will travel and it can bleed outside the lines. So you need to take that into account when you're adding alcohol ink to your projects. But I'm not being too careful, as I know I'm going to be fussy cutting him out. I'm going to put a little bit yellow on his hands and his feet. Here we go. Just like that. Set that to the side. I'm going to take the lighter of the Old Olive. I'm going to take the pen in this time and let's see, do his little arms. That's in shadow a bit there, cut across myself. His legs. Just those fiddly areas, and then I'm going to, oh, you have to hear that click to make sure it's closed right. I'm going to go to the brush end again and start applying some more of the light Old Olive to the rest of his face and body. Just a quick coating like this. There we go. Now, to give it some depth, I'm going to use the darker Old Olive and the pen end again and just bring that in around some of the outside edges. I'm going to put some under his chin, his armpit, top of his thighs, down his side, around his bottom. Now, I am no expert at shading and never will claim to be, but you don't really have to be to get a nice effect, thankfully. You can still enjoy using these markers without being anyway an expert in blending and colouring. So I put the darker colour round. I'm coming back with the lighter pen again, the brush end, and I'm just going to set the marker down and blend, allow the marker to actually blend those colours in slightly. So it'll take the darker edge off, or it'll take that kind of join line off from the darker marker. Darker marker, sounds like a poem. And here we go. I'll just soften those edges a little bit. Bring it around. If you wanted to deepen that again, see the way it's bleeding slightly there, but that's fine. I actually quite like that in this project. Let that blend in. Now, click it on again. I'm going to go back to the light Daffodil Delight, again to the brush end, and here where you see this little bit of highlight, I know it sounds silly, but I'm going to go over it again with the yellow and allow the yellow and the green to blend in a little bit. So the yellow's coming through more like a highlighting rather than a separate colour. See how that's blending? And again here, allow that to soften a little bit on the edge. That is fine. Okay, I'm happy with that. Isn't he pretty? So I'm just going to fussy cut that out and we'll take it from there. Okay, now here is our little chappy all cut out, all fussy cut. I just used my paper snips for that. I thought you didn't need to sit and watch me doing that because it would be quite boring for you. So he's fussy cut out, and now I'm just going to go round the edge with the black Stampin' Right marker, just the edge of it, not the tip. And just give him a bit of a black outline. It takes that white edge off the card, and trust me, it makes a difference to how it looks when it's put down on your project. Let me just colour that in. You don't have to be too particular. There we go. And you may have noticed before I had the little dragonfly stamped out already onto some scrap cardstock. So I fussy cut the wings of that out on its own, and just the wings, tiny little bit of the body to allow me to stick it to the artwork. So basically our little frog is more or less ready to go. I'm going to put a Stampin' Dimensional onto the back of him. Let me just grab one. I'm going to use one of the larger ones, in fact. Let me see. I'm going to stick one on his belly and one on his head area. This ink you see in the back, that's not a mistake. That's the alcohol ink coming through. So keep that in mind if you're ever doing cards and you're thinking of using the alcohol blender pens and you're using a one layer card with no mats. The ink could well and probably will go through the back of your card. You'll be able to see it. So I recommend either stamping and cutting out like this, or adding an additional mat underneath your artwork. Oh, actually I don't. Do I want him? Oh yes, I do want him now, so I'll stick him down. Here we go. And he's going to sit, or he's not going to sit, what am I talking about? He's going to stand. So I'm putting the foot just above there and let him stand above the unicycle. In fact, I'm going to put a little tip, let me see. Is this going to come out? Yes. A little tip of glue on his foot, just a tiny bit, to make it stick down. There we go, to the unicycle. So now he's looking for his dragonfly. Now we know dragonflies aren't yellow, but he's my dragonfly, it's my project. I will do it whatever colour I like, thanking you. So I'm making sure the dragonfly stamp is clean. I'm going to use the same technique as we'd used in the frog, the marker to stamp technique, and I'm just going to colour in the little dragonfly's eyes, legs and body. Here we go. Hopefully you can see that. Put this back on. Little huff. Place him roughly just out of reach of our hoppy little frog. There we go. We've just got the dragonfly's body. No wings, and I'm going to use, let me see, the pen end of the grey granite marker. Give this a little bit of shading. Don't have to be too fussy. Look at those lovely googly eyes. Bring our, whoops, multi-purpose liquid glue in again. Love this stuff so much. Put a tiny bead of it just on the bottom of the wings and set these onto the body. I'll just have them sitting up slightly. Let that dry. Whoops, a daisy, I keep moving it. I am all thumbs. I'm one of these crafters, honestly. Right, we'll let that dry, and in the meantime I actually coloured him in just with this standard Stampin' Right marker, the Daffodil Delight colour. Okay, so let's colour the bike in. I need Bermuda Bay or something. I've forgotten about that. Let me just find one. Yes, Bermuda Bay Stampin' Right marker, because that's the colour of the cardstock that we'll be using. So I'm going to do the bike frame. You can hardly see this, but it's just enough to coordinate, which is what I love about the inks and the papers and the cardstock from Stampin' Up, because it all coordinates beautifully. Okay, so that's that one, and I'm going to bring in the grey granite again, the pen end. I'm just going to colour in the seat, part of the petals, and the chain a little. Don't have to be perfect. Let's see. And I'm going to bring the brush end of the grey granite in and add some colour to the tire. the unicycle. Let me see. Here we go. I hope that's not too dark. I've got quite a bit of shadow here today. For some reason the lighting's not great. Right, set that to the side. I'm going to bring my basic black marker back in using the pen end. I want to add a wee bit of depth to this. So from about here I just mark with the basic black marker. Oops, it's a bit thick, but not to worry. Just give that a bit of shading there. And white gel pen, absolutely love these. Make sure that that's working. And put the PC back on, gives me some light. And just put a little flash of light here. If you want to dab that, you can put your thumb on top of it, but do not rub, don't smear, just. There we go. My hands are getting inky already. Okay, and Wink of Stella. Let's bring in our clear Wink of Stella brush and give our little dragonfly a little bit of colour, maybe his tummy. And the shading across his face, just a bit of glitzy, not too much, it's very subtle. Now actually, I'm just thinking blender pens. Now these are different. I'll just grab one. These are different to the Stampin' Blends. There's no colour in these. You get 3 in a pack if I remember right. They're dual ended, they've got 2 ends, both brush ends, both the same size. They just have a blending solution in them. There's no colour, where the Stampin' Right markers are alcohol markers, coloured alcohol markers. So I'm going to open my grey granite ink pad. I've already got some ink onto the palette side. You do that by squeezing the pad together. And it transfers ink onto the palette. Let me move the scissors. With the blender pen, just pick up some ink. Test it if you wish onto your scrap paper. See the way it blends away to nothing? So that's exactly what I'm going to do under the bike, just to give it a bit of shading. So I'm going to put it about here and allow it to blend away to nothing. Pick up another little piece. So I'm going to bring it out, the shadow out about the length of the frog. Let's darken this a little bit more. It doesn't have to be a work of art. Easy peasy. There we go. And the blender pens, sorry, the blender pens clean just like that. And you can use them then on any other colour you wish. They're fabulous. If you haven't got those, you really should get them. So that's a little bit of shadow underneath our frog. The next thing we need to do is some heat embossing, and then we're ready to put it all together again. Okay, so to do the heat embossing, I've got my embossing buddy to take any oils, moisture, static or whatever off the scrap basic black cardstock. I've got my Versamark ink pad, my stamp, and it's you can do anything sentiment, and of course my embossing powder. I have my heat tool ready, plugged in, ready to go, and I will turn the sound off at that point because you don't need to hear it. So very quickly run the embossing buddy over the cardstock just like that, ink up the sentiment into Versamark ink pad, stamp it down. I'm not being too careful because I'm going to fussy cut this out. Give it a second or two. Into my white embossing powder, shake it over, tap it off. There we go, perfect. Now let me just clear this up and we'll get heat embossing. Okay, now it's time to assemble the card and finish it off. I've already done the insert and given our little froggy guy on the inside. I had pre-cut a Poppy Parade mat and put some Stampin' Dimensionals onto it, so just need to remove the back of those. In the meantime though, I'm going to put some multi-purpose liquid glue, Tombow some people call it, onto the back of my artwork piece. And I like to use this because it gives me a couple of seconds wriggle time, for I'm rubbish at getting things put on straight first time. I'm sure you may have noticed in other projects, but there we go. That's allowed me a little bit of wriggle time. Isn't he gorgeous? Now just take the backing off the Stampin' Dimensionals. These of course come in, there's none on that, in 2 sizes, which is fantastic. It means for the smaller pieces that you're not having to try and trim these down to size. They're already handy size for you. They are fantastic. So that's that done. Let's set it down. Whoops, here we go. Center it onto our card front. There we are. That just gives it a nice bit of dimension. Again, the frog is on dimensional, so it lifts it forward. The wings of the dragonfly are sitting forward, so it's all building up a nice dimension. This is our finished piece of heat embossing. You can do anything sentiment. I just fussy cut that with a pair of scissors. No punches needed really for this. Little Stampin' Dimensional onto the back of it, and I'm going to place that roughly about here, I think. Whoops, daisy, it stuck to my finger. Let's straighten that up. I told you, can't put anything straight, I'm rubbish. And that's our finished project. Isn't he just super, super cute? And can you believe you get that free in Celebration? You've got to check out Celebration, check it out on my blog, and see how you can easily get beautiful free products from the Celebration catalogue. And here we go, just to finish it off nicely. There's the envelope decorated as well. So in summary, what we've covered today is some simple brayering. We've done the marker to stamp technique. We've done a little ink blending with the alcohol markers and some very simple sponging into the clouds. And again, a little bit at the bottom with a little bit of heat embossing thrown in. So thank you for sticking with me today. I've so much more to show you, to share with you. So make sure to stay tuned into my channel by subscribing to it. And if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. That would be great. Thank you so much.